Welcome to my channel, The Historic State. What does real power look like? Is it the rank on a shoulder or the fear in someone's eyes? Today we have a story that challenges everything you think you know about strength. It starts in a place of shocking humiliation. A moment so degrading it was meant to break a soldier, but it didn't. Instead, it created a legend. The air in the officer's restroom was thick with shock. A handful of soldiers stood frozen, their eyes wide, not believing what they had just seen their colonel do. Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins was on her knees, gasping for air, cold, dirty water dripping from her face onto her uniform. Colonel Thorne stood over her, his face a mask of rage and triumph. He had just dunked her head in a toilet in front of her peers. He thought he had broken her. He thought he had proven his point. But what she did next is the reason this story is still told in whispers on that base today. To understand how a single act of quiet dignity could end a powerful man's career, we have to go back to the beginning. Second Lieutenant Sarah Jenkins was not born into the military. Her father was a high school history teacher, and her mother a librarian. She grew up surrounded by books, not bullets. But in those books, she found stories of heroes, of people who stood for something. She joined the army with a fire in her heart, a quiet, steady flame of duty, and a desire to prove that strength wasn't about being the loudest person in the room. At 25, she was sharp, talented, and an exceptional strategist. But she was an underdog, and no one felt that more than her commanding officer. Colonel Marcus Thorne was military royalty. His family had a decorated history stretching back generations. To him, the army had a specific look, a specific sound, and it wasn't the quiet competence of a young woman like Jenkins. He saw her thoughtful approach as weakness and her intelligence as a threat to his old-school, brute force way of thinking. He believed soldiers needed to be broken before they could be built, and from day one he decided he was going to break Lieutenant Jenkins. It started small. He would publicly ridicule her reports in briefings, pointing out a single misplaced comma as if it were a catastrophic failure. He assigned her tasks far below her rank, organizing storage closets, managing inventory, all in an attempt to demoralize her. During drills, his voice would boom across the field. "Try to keep up, Lieutenant," even when she was leading the pack. But Sarah never gave him the reaction he wanted. She never complained, never argued, never broke down. She simply did the work perfectly and without complaint. She treated every soldier, from the lowest private to the highest officer, with a respect that Colonel Thorne reserved for no one. And slowly the other soldiers started to notice. They saw her fairness, her strength, and her quiet resilience. The more they respected her, the more the colonel despised her. The breaking point came on a Tuesday afternoon. In a planning session for an upcoming training exercise, the colonel laid out his strategy. It was predictable and inefficient. Then Lieutenant Jenkins respectfully offered an alternative, a brilliant, innovative plan that would save time, resources, and reduce risk. She wasn't arrogant. She was simply right. The other officers in the room murmured in agreement. For Colonel Thorne, this was the ultimate insult. To be outshined by the very person he had tried so hard to diminish was more than his ego could handle. The meeting ended, and as the officers filed out, Thorne ordered Jenkins to stay behind. His voice was dangerously low. "You think you're clever, Lieutenant?" he sneered. Before she could answer, he grabbed her by the arm. His grip was like iron. He dragged her from the briefing room towards the adjacent restroom. The few soldiers still in the hallway froze, their blood running cold. What happened next was the shocking scene from the beginning. In a final, desperate act to assert his dominance, he committed the most humiliating act he could think of. He forced her head into the toilet bowl and flushed. The cold water shocked her system, but the humiliation was 1,000 times colder. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for, the moment she would finally break. He expected tears. He expected her to scream, to run away in shame. He expected to see a broken soldier, but he was wrong. Slowly, gracefully, Lieutenant Jenkins pushed herself up. She stood tall, water dripping from her hair and onto the floor, her uniform stained. She didn't wipe her face. She didn't look away. She locked her eyes directly on his, and in the dead silent room, her voice rang out. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was calm, clear, and it cut through him like a knife. "You're right, Colonel," she said. "A uniform doesn't automatically make someone a leader. Your actions just prove that to everyone here." She held his gaze for one more second, letting her words hang in the air. The shame in the room was no longer hers. It was his. Then she turned, and with her head held high, she walked out of the restroom, leaving a stunned colonel and a group of silent witnesses in her wake. Word of what happened spread across the base in hours. The story wasn't about the colonel's cruelty. It was about the lieutenant's unbreakable dignity. That night, Sarah didn't file a report filled with anger or vengeance. She wrote a detailed, factual account of the incident, signed it, and sent it up the chain of command. The investigation was swift. The witnesses, inspired by her courage, told the truth. Colonel Thorne tried to deny it, then claimed it was just a harsh training exercise. But his lies crumbled. He was brought before a military panel, and when he saw Lieutenant Jenkins walk in her perfectly pressed uniform, he knew it was over. Colonel Marcus Thorne was stripped of his rank and dishonorably discharged from the army he claimed to love. But the real victory wasn't his downfall. It came a few weeks later. As Sarah walked across the parade grounds, a platoon of soldiers jogging past slowed their pace. Their drill sergeant called them to a halt. Then one by one they turned to face her, and together they raised their hands in a salute. It wasn't a salute required by regulation. It was a salute of profound earned respect. As she returned their salute, her eyes stung with tears she refused to let fall. She hadn't won with fists or with anger. She had won with something far more powerful: her honor. Her story became a quiet legend on that base, a lesson taught to every new recruit. True strength isn't about how hard you can push others down. It's about how tall you can stand when someone tries to break you. Rank can be given and power can be abused, but honor is something you carry in your soul, and it can never be taken away. Thank you for watching this episode of The Historic State. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because history isn't just written in the grand battles, but in the quiet moments of extraordinary courage.